Hi there, thanks for joining. I'm just going to give you a brief summary of what havening is about before we start our session today. So, havening is a psychosensory therapy used in the treatment of trauma, anxiety, and other stress related conditions. Psychosensory therapy is based on the fact that the body is an electrical chemical organ. Okay. And if you break down the word, psycho relates to the mind and sensory relates to the senses. In the case of havening, the sense of touch, which we'll come on to shortly. Now, whether you're aware or not, but the body is made up of billions of neurons, and it's how the body communicates to itself internally. Um, and if I give you a quick example, imagine that you are leaning towards a kettle and your elbow accidentally touches the kettle and it's hot. You quickly move your elbow away. What's happened is in that split second of time, um, your elbow has basically sent a message up to your brain to say, um, this is hot. And your brain sends a message back down and say, well, you better move it. And the elbow moves. Okay. It happens instantly without you even thinking about it. Okay. And what's basically happening is all these neurons are passing on messages to each other. Now, they're not connected physically, so to speak. There's little gaps between each one, and they communicate via chemicals. So the little chemicals, that is how they communicate. Now, and what tends to happen is those sort of pathways can sometimes become bound. So a particular pathway will become bound, and they'll say, "Right, I remember this happened before. This is what I did to react to it." Now, for example, in the example of trauma, in fact, before I go into trauma, I'll give you another example. Let's just pretend that you are a cricket professional, okay? And you're used to catching a ball very, very quickly. Your memory of this, the way your mind works, your body works, you get better and better over time, where you can react very, very quickly because your body has experienced this happening before, and it's all to do with how these neurons have mapped the pathway. Okay, using a more intense example of trauma, and the example I'll give, and I'll just ask this question first. Have you ever been bitten by a dog? No? Good. Okay. You're not scared of dogs. That's fine. Okay. So I'll give you the example first, and then we'll talk through what's happened. Okay. So imagine a young girl, she's 4 years old, and she gets bitten by a dog at a park. Okay. The dog chases her, bites her, um, and she, at the time, obviously her heart rate shot up. She was very scared. She thought maybe she was going to get killed or eaten by the dog. Um, and then fast forward 20 years later, mid 20s, and she's walking along a park and she can see a dog 20 meters away. Um, the dog is on a lead. There is no reason why the dog isn't going to attack her, but actually, what's happening is her heart rate starts to go up. She might get a little bit sweaty. She might sort of start moving a bit quicker. She starts walking faster, and she might think to herself, "Oh, what's going to happen here?" She's a bit fearful of her safety, and she's feeling a bit scared and anxious. Okay, so what in effect has happened is the memory of when she was small, um, and the reaction to what she had has almost been like, think of it as like it's been glued together. Okay. So 20 years later, the dog, which clearly isn't going to attack her, she's in no real danger at all, or she's not in any danger, sorry. But she is reacting in the way that she thinks, she was that small girl. And the reason is because that memory and the reaction has been bound together. Okay. And the reason it's happened is because throughout trauma, four things have to happen for a traumatic event to be almost fused in the brain like that. There needs to be the physical event. So, obviously, the fact that the dog was chasing her. There needs to be a meaning of it at the time. So, at the time, she was naturally very scared, thinking she's going to die or she's going to be eaten. Um, Now, what might have happened as well is at that time, she might have been in quite a vulnerable place in her life. Okay, and what I mean by that is it could be that maybe at home things weren't very happy, or she was being bullied at school, or she was having big arguments with her friends, something like that. So she was naturally a bit vulnerable, and she had the feeling of inescapability. And in this case, she physically couldn't escape the park quick enough. You know, this dog was very fast, and she couldn't escape the fact that the dog was chasing her. Um, and obviously, those symptoms I just described, what she was thinking, what it meant to her, her heart rate increased. You know, she physically tried to run, and she was emotionally scared. That is obviously the reaction of what's happened there. Now, um, if you just pause for that for a minute, okay, that is how the trauma has been encoded in the brain. Now, I don't know if you've heard of brain waves before, but there are five different types of brain waves at any one time. Okay, and they're basically a measure of the electrical impulses throughout the brain. Now, think of the most intense one, which is called gamma, and that will be an example of that girl at the time. Fight or flight mode, something very intense. It could be, you know, you're sprinting for the train because you're about to miss it. On the other end of the spectrum, you have delta waves, which typically you only experience in deep sleep. Okay, and they're very relaxing and calming. Now, what havening does, in particular havening touch, it can activate the delta waves while we're conscious, while we're awake. And there's three types of techniques we're going to use during these sessions. The first one is with the hands. Obviously, you can apply it to yourself. It's very simple, just like this. You're stroking the palms of your hands. The second one is down your arms. So from the top of the shoulders down to the elbows there. And the last one is your face. Top of your head down to the bottom of your face there. Okay. And within a short time frame, you know, 10 seconds, you are going to really activate these delta waves. Now, the reason this is so important is if I go back to think of it as that trauma event as a glue. So you have the memory and the reaction, and the glue has almost fused the two together. The delta waves breaks down that bond. Okay. So in effect, you can rewire your brain. You'll still have the memory of what's happened, but you won't now have these automatic reactions that you are having as a result of it. Okay. Now, what we have to do before it works, we can't just, you know, do the havening touch and then before we know it, you know, we've moved away from stress. We actually have to go back into that event or whatever it is that's causing stress and wake it up. Okay, light it up really, and think of it as a mushroom. Okay, so you really want to open the mushroom up. So you really want to revisit that event. It might feel a little bit uncomfortable, but once that is lit up, in effect, what's happened is the delta waves can then break down the glue, the bond, and then and decouple, sorry, that reaction. Okay, the trauma effect or whatever stress related incident we're going to work through. Um, Now, while that's happening, um, there will be examples where I will have to distract you. Okay, so at the very start of a session, we will revisit an event or what's happening, a memory. And like I said, we will light it up and you might be feeling a level of stress. Now, how we can measure that stress is by what is called a SUD score. So a subjective unit of distress. Okay, it's a scale from 0 to 10. 10 being the most stressful, 0 being it's causing me absolutely no stress at all. Okay, and it's always based on in that moment of time. So if I'm going back to that example with the girl being chased and bitten by the dog, I'm not talking about her when she was 4 because naturally that would always be a 10. It's her as the however old she is now thinking about the event in that moment of time. Okay, so when we first talk about the event that we're going to go through for yourself, you will give it an initial score out of 10 when the memory is fully lit up using that mushroom analogy. Um, and then what will happen is I'm going to distract you. Okay. And we're going to do some silly little games. I'm going to ask you to, for example, count backwards from 20 in twos. We might do some nursery rhyme songs by humming them. I might ask you to give me your top 10 takeaways. Um, it's very playful. There's no right or wrong at all. The whole principle is we're trying to distract you from that event. And while we're doing it, we're doing the havening touch, either on the arms, the hands, or the face. You can rotate between the three. You can just stick to one, whatever your preference is. But the key is you always have to be applying it because that is when the delta waves can break down that bond, that glue, while the memory is lit up. Okay. But you won't be thinking about the memory because I'm going to be distracting you with lots of silly games. Okay. So, and then what we'll do is we'll have a little break. We'll check back into the event, and you can give us an update on the SUD score. It could have gone up, it could stay the same, it could go down. Again, it's about how you think about it at that moment in time. And you can also give me any updates, any comments on the memory as well. Okay. Now, as we work through these sessions together, it won't necessarily always be about a previous event. We can use this principle to prime future events, and think of it as a weed in the garden. Maybe an event or something that's causing you stress. We're going to pull that weed out, and there will be a gap left in the garden. And it's an opportunity to fill it with something more, more relaxing, something that makes you feel better. It could be a state of mind, how you want to feel, how you want to behave for maybe a future event that's going to happen. For example, you could be very nervous about doing a presentation at work. So we can use these principles, always using the delta waves via the havening touch. Um, and that is how we're going to work through. Okay. I think I've covered everything. I will keep my notes always on me. You don't need to worry about learning or knowing all of this. I just think it's important for you to have an understanding of the principles, but I will always guide you through it every step of the way. Okay? Any questions? No? Lovely. Thank you.